This monstrous story left no one indifferent. A 14-year-old girl went out for a walk and disappeared without a trace. She was searched for over a month, and this investigation became the largest in the last 9 years. Thanks to hundreds of police officers and surveillance camera footage, this mystery was eventually solved, but the truth turned out to be much more convoluted and shocking. In this video, we will tell you what happened to Alice Gross. Alice Gross was born on Valentine's Day, February 14, 2000, in London. She grew up in a loving family with an older sister. From an early age, the girl showed a passion for creativity. She loved drawing, playing the piano, and violin. Later, Alice started writing her own amazing songs and performing them to her own music. We will show one such composition by Alice at the end of this video. In addition, the girl was interested in fashion design, and at the age of 11, she even created dresses for herself, which she planned to wear to her school prom. When she was 13, doctors diagnosed her with anorexia and depression. Despite all this, Alice continued to pursue her creative interests, and in the future, she had every chance of achieving colossal success. On August 28, 2014, Alice told her mother that she would go for a walk. She had school holidays and plenty of free time. So the girl liked to walk along a small canal and river near her home. They lived in a London suburb called Canoe, and her usual route was 4.5 kilometers. The girl left around 3 p.m., promising her parents to return around 6 p.m. Later, she wrote that she would be home soon. However, Alice did not return at the appointed time, and when it was already 7, her parents began to worry. They tried to call her, but the girl's phone was turned off. The fact that Alice suffered from anorexia and depression only added to the concern. Her parents feared that something might have happened to her. Due to her physical condition, she experienced constant weakness and could faint. The parents called several of Alice's friends in the hope that she might be with them. But no one had seen the girl that day, so the mother and father decided to contact the police. They immediately began the search and first examined the route Alice usually took. Her relatives and family friends also participated in the search. Unfortunately, they did not find any traces of the girl. But detectives were able to locate several witnesses. Thanks to their testimonies about the places Alice had passed, the police were able to more accurately determine her route, narrowing down the search area and selecting several street cameras that could have captured her. Studying the recordings, detectives did find Alice. Almost immediately after leaving home, she appeared on the first camera, heading along the Grand Union Canal. After some time, she was noticed in the area lower down the canal. The last time the camera captured her on the way back near Trumpers Way Bridge. The police also informed the media about the disappearance. And in the first hours after her disappearance, the news spread throughout London. Thanks to this, detectives received several calls from witnesses who had seen Alice. Unfortunately, all this did not bring the police closer to finding the girl. Based on the camera footage and witness statements, she disappeared on her way home, deviating from most of her usual route. But what happened to her remained a mystery. 3 days passed. The police continued to study camera recordings in nearby areas and search local parks and other secluded places. At the same time, patrols visited houses along Alice's route, questioning local residents. On September 1st, the girl's relatives recorded a video appeal pleading for her to come home. They also asked anyone with information about her whereabouts to contact the police. At that time, investigators considered several theories. The first and most alarming was the version of abduction. Despite the fact that most of Alice's route passed along city streets, there were many remote and hidden areas where someone could attack the girl. In addition, the London police often dealt with situations where people were abducted right in the center, not to mention the suburbs. The second was the theory of running away from home. Alice's parents feared that depression might push her to such a decision. They also did not rule out that due to her illnesses, the girl could take her own life. But for the police, these versions seemed unlikely. At the age of 14, Alice would hardly be able to run away and hide, especially without outside help. And if she had taken her own life, she would most likely have been found by now. With each passing day, this case attracted more attention from the public. On September 3rd, it was transferred to the Special Unit of Scotland Yard. Despite usually dealing only with murders, detectives assessed the chances of the girl returning home as high. Scotland Yard organized extensive searches, joined by hundreds of volunteers. Seeing the heartbreaking appeals of her parents and sister in the news, sympathetic Londoners walked through the area from early morning until late at night, and the next day, detectives announced the discovery of a significant clue they found: Alice's backpack, in which her shoes, worn by her on that day, were placed. It was relatively close to her home. This discovery allowed the police to narrow down the search area and focus on a small section near the canal. Investigators understood that the girl was unlikely to have taken off her shoes, thrown them along with the backpack, and run away. She had no spare shoes with her, making the situation even more perplexing. Scotland Yard decided to publish all available camera recordings on which Alice was captured. The backpack with the shoes indicated that the girl could be in serious danger. The main version still remained abduction, but investigators did not completely rule out the possibility that the girl could have committed suicide. For this reason, they tried to use all available resources to locate her. Publishing the recordings could attract more attention from the public, and someone might remember seeing Alice that day. In addition to this, several hundred more personnel from various agencies joined the search, and a total of 600 people were working on the case. This investigation became the largest in terms of the number of involved police officers since 2005. Some of them conducted a direct survey of the area, while others studied recordings from hundreds of cameras that Alice might have appeared on. Scotland Yard also offered a reward for any information that would help find the girl. Although the police could not locate her phone, they requested data from the mobile company about its last known location. It turned out that Alice had sent a message to her father almost from the same place where her backpack would later be found. Everything indicated that investigators needed to focus specifically on this area. It was decided to thoroughly search the territory within a few square kilometers. Every inch of land and water was examined manually. Police squads literally felt the bottom of the river and canal for any clues. 2 days after the discovery of the backpack, it became known that the police had arrested a 25-year-old man on suspicion of Alice's murder. The next day, they arrested another person but refused to comment on the situation until all details were clarified. However, both suspects were soon released, and Scotland Yard stated that they could not establish the involvement of these two individuals in Alice's disappearance. More than a week passed and there were no developments in the case. Only on September 16th, the police made another statement. They announced that they were looking for a 41-year-old man named Ernest Zockles in connection with Alice's disappearance. He had come to England from Latvia 7 years ago, lived in the area, and worked as a builder. Scotland Yard became interested in him for two seemingly unrelated reasons. Firstly, Ernest's colleagues reported his disappearance to the police on September 3rd. He did not show up for work, did not answer calls, and was not at home. It seemed like he had simply disappeared. Secondly, detectives found out that Zockeln's route from home to work passed approximately along the same path that the girl walked on the day of her disappearance. All of this was not enough to make any conclusions about the man's involvement in the girl's disappearance. But soon, detectives discovered something really alarming. On one of the camera recordings, they noticed a middle-aged man riding a bicycle on a bridge where Alice had passed just a few minutes ago. This man turned out to be Zockeln's. After some time, he appeared on the next camera. Here, detectives noticed a very strange moment. The distance between these cameras should have taken only a few minutes. But the man on the bicycle spent almost an hour traveling this road. A reasonable question arose: what was he doing all this time on such a short stretch? The police examined this area and concluded that he could not have taken a longer route to the next camera because he simply was not there. What added to the concern was the fact that all this happened in the very area where Alice's trail supposedly ended. The police also concluded that the man's clothes were wet when he went out on the road. Continuing to study the cameras, detectives noticed Zockeln's on his bicycle returning to the same place after 2 hours and leaving again after 50 minutes. Moreover, he did not appear on the camera located on the bridge. This indicated that the man had spent all this time inside a small blind zone. Furthermore, on him was already different clothing. After about an hour, he appeared on the camera at a local store buying beer. The next morning, the situation repeated. Zockeln's returned to the same place between the cameras around 7 a.m. and also went back there in the evening. All this was enough to obtain a search warrant for his home. It turned out that the man lived there with his girlfriend and their 2 daughters. His girlfriend also had no idea where Zockeln's had disappeared to. Upon learning that he was suspected of killing the girl, she stated that Arnes could never do something like that. She described him as a caring and loving father. However, Scotland Yard delved into the man's biography and uncovered a truly horrifying moment. It turned out that Zockeln's had a dark criminal past. In 1998, while he was in Latvia, he cold-bloodedly and calculatedly murdered his wife, having previously dug a grave for her in the forest, for which he received only 7 years in prison. After serving his sentence, he moved to England, and local law enforcement had no knowledge of his criminal history in his home country. Police searched Zockeln's house and found a recently dug piece of land on his property. They did not disclose information about whether they found any evidence there. But a significant discovery awaited them in the basement. There, they found the broken rear panel of a white iPhone for South. The same phone belonged to Alice. Examining the contents of his computer, the police also found that the man had searched for information on Alice Gross' disappearance a few days after the incident. Based on all this, Arnes Zockeln's was declared a fugitive. Scotland Yard feared that he might have escaped back to Latvia or another European country, so they searched for him throughout the European Union. However, law enforcement agencies failed to find a single trace of the suspect. Meanwhile, a month had passed since Alice's disappearance, and on September 30th, the police made a disheartening statement. A human body was discovered in the river near the girl's disappearance. At that time, the identity was not yet established, but the police shared a horrifying fact. Someone had put in considerable effort to ensure that the body remained submerged and did not resurface. Only the next day did law enforcement confirm that the deceased was Alice Gross, though no one doubted it by then. Everything happened right where she disappeared. The cause of death was strangulation. It turned out that Alice's body was wrapped in construction bags tied to a large stump. In addition, the criminal had constructed a whole contraption with a bicycle wheel and bricks, which also prevented the body from surfacing. She was wearing only one sock. Detectives visited the construction site where Zockholms worked and found out that the same bags were used to conceal Alice's body. After the discovery of the body, the police continued to search for Zockholms, working closely with Interpol and local European intelligence agencies. But they still could not find any traces of him. This continued until October 4th, when investigators made a shocking discovery. They found a hanging body of a man in the park just a kilometer from the scene of Alice's murder. 2 days later, experts confirmed that the deceased was Ernest Zockholms. Nobody expected such a turn of events. Scotland Yard's main theory was that the suspect had escaped to Europe, but in reality, he had been under their noses the whole time. Medical experts concluded that the man had taken his own life on the day of his disappearance, September 3rd, and his body went unnoticed for an entire month. This was not surprising given that Zockholms chose a very remote and inaccessible location where he was extremely difficult to notice. With Zockholms' DNA in hand, investigators gathered even more evidence. Near the location where Alice's body was found, the police found a cigarette butt that was sent to the laboratory. Experts extracted DNA from the filter which matched Zockholms' sample. Moreover, in the laboratory, they claimed that with a high degree of probability, the perpetrator's DNA was found on the victim's body. They could not assert this with 100% certainty due to how long the body had been underwater. His DNA was also found on the girl's backpack and shoes. By that time, the police had uncovered another horrifying fact. 2 years after moving to England, Zockholms had harassed a 14-year-old girl just a kilometer from where Alice's body was found. A man attempted to commit an indecent act, but the victim survived. The man was arrested. Here is where it gets interesting. The girl did not file an official accusation, and the criminal was simply released. It is not entirely clear how this could happen, but the fact remains. An adult man assaulted the girl, came into police custody, and escaped punishment. Furthermore, information about this case surfaced only after the criminal's body was found in the park. Despite all this, the police continued their investigation, and it took some time to piece together the events. According to their version, on that fateful day, August 28th, Zockholms was riding his bicycle on the same route where Alice used to walk. Noticing her in a secluded area hidden from prying eyes, he attacked her with the intention of committing lewd acts. The subsequent developments will never be known, but the outcome was tragic. Zockholms killed Alice, hiding her body in several attempts, constantly returning to the scene. It remains unknown why he chose to end his own life after the act. Can this be considered a display of conscience? A highly debatable question. Alice's parents, who endured such a terrible tragedy, were outraged by the government's actions. They questioned how the authorities of the United Kingdom allowed a convicted murderer to enter the country and live there. They dedicated many years to advocating for the government to tighten control over migrants and prevent criminals from entering the country. Unfortunately, they did not succeed in achieving significant changes. A month after the discovery of Zockholms' body, another interesting event occurred. The medical expert involved in the investigation left a folder with case documents on a train. 30 pages contained important information about the murder, including medical details and undisclosed specifics. The public, media, and Alice's parents harshly criticized the police, but they were helpless as the folder could not be found. However, no one decided to judge the deceased criminal. Investigators stated that if he were alive, they would have had enough evidence to bring the case to court, but there was no guarantee of a guilty verdict. Instead, a hearing was held in which the jury acknowledged the obvious fact. Alice was murdered and her death was not an accident. This procedure was formal and played no significant role. The funeral took place on October 23rd, with thousands of people gathering at the memorial. At the end of the ceremony, a beautiful song, written and performed by the girl herself, was shown on a large screen.
Survive through the life we live today.